Про Braille. Смотри в точку.
Hello everyone and welcome to Tiflo Info. Today I have so many people join me today. First of all, my incredible team, Yana Leschenko and Andre Polykanine.
Hello.
Hey everyone. And I have my lovely guests joining me today. We have three guests. We have Sarah Morley Wilkins. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, if it's that thing.
No, that was perfect. Hello
You
all.
forgot the doctor thing.
Yeah, I forgot the doctor.
Doctor
Sorry about that.
Morley
We have Jay Pocknell. Is it
Hello,
correct?
it's lovely to be here. Yes, thank you very much.
And James Bowden.
Hello, good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Would you like to introduce yourselves a little bit so our guests are kind of aware who you are?
Sure. I live in the UK, and my background has always been about accessibility for people with visual impairments and blindness. So I started my career as a psychologist, looking at the usability and design of Windows interfaces for blind users and DAISY players, and progressed to accessible formats, looking after the Tactile Graphics Centre in the UK, worked with RNIB for a long time, Dolphin Computer Systems, and now with the DAISY Consortium and the Accessible Books Consortium.
Wonderful.
Sarah, are you
Such a
visually
wonderful
impaired
bunch.
yourself?
No, I feel
ask
a
the
bit of a fraud in this group because I'm fully sighted, but
Okay.
I've worked in the field of visual impairment my whole career, and it's always been user based. So always looking at what the end users need to design solutions that work for them.
But you're a Brailleist, right? You know Braille. You read
I know Braille, but I don't read Braille.
Okay.
Okay.
That is.
Let's just first let our guests introduce themselves, and then we'll
sure.
because we don't want to leave James and Jay on their own. So Jay, would you want to kind of carry on?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my name's Jay Pocknell. I'm kind of wearing three different hats here tonight, really. Firstly, as a partially sighted musician, I'm a guitarist primarily, and producer. So I do a lot of audio recording and stuff like that, and mixing and mastering and those kinds of studio-based roles. I also work at RNIB, the Royal National Institute of Blind People in the UK, as music support officer. So we support blind and partially sighted people to access music across all ages, really. So people in education who might be accessing music for the first time. It might be people who want to get into music work, or it might be people who have done music stuff their whole lives, but they might now be losing their sight and they need to find different ways of adapting their music making to suit their level of sight. I also project manage Sound Without Sight, which is an online community hub for blind and partially sighted musicians. And what we aim to do there is collate all the useful information about music making that's relevant to blind and partially sighted people. So we have a whole host of resources on everything from music notation, which is what we'll be talking about today primarily, but all the way through to audio production and accessing the music industry and stuff like that. So that's me in a nutshell.
And the whole webinars,
Fantastic.
right?
Exactly. So yeah,
webinars.
we run monthly events which do then get repurposed as webinars, as podcasts afterwards as well, all on different topics. So some focusing on accessible software for music, others focusing on showcasing members from our community that are doing great stuff as a performer or as a producer. So yeah, loads of different stuff.
And James?
Hello, I'm James Bowden, and like everybody else, we have various different hats. And I work for the RNIB as Braille Technical Officer, and I am a Braille reader. Braille Technical Officer basically means I'm supposed to know something about Braille and something about technical, which includes not only the different Braille codes, including the music Braille code, but also something about Braille technology like Braille displays and Braille translation software and things like that. I'm also involved in various committees and organizations such as the ICEB, the International Council on English Braille, UCAF is the UK Association for Accessible Formats. I've been involved a bit with the eBraille project, and I'm delighted to work with Sarah Morley Wilkins and Jay on Braille music things.
That's
Well,
great. Thank you, guys.
Andre, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with
Sure.
my question. So,
Sure.
since primarily, yes, I guess we should point out that today our main subject is Braille music. Yeah, music, Braille, everything. And so, I would like you to please, any of you, to talk briefly about DAISY Consortium itself, what it is, because not everybody knows, I'm sure, and what is this initiative of yours that you have to disseminate, to spread information about Braille music and to produce more, more material in Braille. So, anyone, could you please kind of enlighten everybody first?
Yeah, that's
I'll-
Mette Holt.
I'll take that one as I'm
Okay,
here
Sarah, please.
from the DAISY Consortium. So we are a non-profit global consortium of organisations committed to improving access to reading for people with print disabilities worldwide. So we contribute experts to standards working groups, we develop guidelines, good practice, so that people can produce accessible formats in a better way. We promote and develop reading systems so that readers can have the best possible reading experience for accessibility. And we support open standards and help develop an inclusive publishing system for book publishing generally. And in terms of music Braille, about 10 years ago, the blindness agencies and libraries for the blind in the DAISY Consortium were very concerned that music Braille looked like it might be dying out. And they were very concerned because they wanted to keep Braille music alive. They knew that there was still a great need for it
Dying out?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
really? In
Yeah.
the UK or all over the world?
Well, this was all over. So
My
there
gosh.
were 3 or 4
Okay.
countries who about 10 years ago were so concerned, they asked the DAISY Consortium to look into this, to see what the problems were and what could be done about it. So I was asked to project manage this activity. So the first thing I wanted to do was talk to the blindness libraries about their usage, their users, their production facilities, what was happening in education, what tools people were using, what standards people were following. And we did quite a big global survey, which resulted in a really big requirements report. But basically, we identified there were several factors that were causing the decline of music Braille production and use. And these included things like, from one end, there weren't enough materials available generally.
Exactly.
So materials weren't being shared.
Okay.
Secondly, there weren't very many tools that allowed people to convert things into Braille. There were some, but not necessarily suitable for everybody to use.
I see.
There weren't enough standards for music Braille that were well enough known. Mainstream notation tools weren't accessible to blind users, and what they were exporting wasn't useful for us for accessibility purposes at all. Publishers didn't know anything about accessible music or the needs of blind or low vision musicians. Teachers were not learning about music Braille and how to teach it. And transcribers who had the expertise were gradually aging and retiring, and they weren't being replaced. So we had this whole global problem emerging where not enough people were learning to use it. So the demand went down, so production went down. And it was this negative spiral. And 10 years ago, the DAISY Consortium committed activity to try and improve that with a range of very strategic global interventions. And that's what that's what I've been leading for those recent years. And it's been my privilege, because in the Braille field there are lots of activities that don't get a lot of traction and often take a long time to come to fruition. But for Music Braille, it's so small in one sense, but it's so vital to so many people that we were able to get funding from the blindness libraries around the world to make some of these changes, to and we can spend the rest of the session talking about all of those interventions. But
yeah, I agree.
that
I
was
mean,
that was why it happened. And we're in a position now where we'll tell you the positive outcome. But from that very sad position, or the worrying position 10 years ago, we're now in a really brilliant place for global Music Braille.
you are, because when I came to England 10 years ago, no, 15 actually, and I kind of had a feeling that generally Braille was in decline, because people were talking about various, iPhone and Android devices, and they were talking about how they can use a screen reader or whatnot. And I felt that the Braille was not, taking as much interest as it is now. And even when I'm following Kevin Satisable, the guy who does the music, who performs, and for the last 5 years or so, Braille music has improved, and the interest for music from the blind musician's perspective has changed, has improved, has literally gone up massively. Do you guys feel it in RNI, working for RNIB, James and Jay? Can you elaborate a little bit?
We certainly see a demand for Braille music, and I think what we've been able to do over the last few years is work with Sarah and the DAISY Consortium to make sure that hopefully there's much better access these days. Hopefully we'll get a chance later on in the program to talk about the Accessible Music Publishing Initiative, and I think that's a real key piece of work, bringing music publishers into the conversation as well, and hopefully, in the longer term, opening up access to music much more widely than having to perhaps commission your own transcription of something and wait for it to be done manually. So I think there is certainly, there are opportunities now that kind of weren't there 10 years ago, and so much of that is DAISY is to thank for that.
Sorry, just cannot. You go ahead, James. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I first encountered automated Braille music transcription 8 years ago. I think it was 2017. And I was told about this program that could do it. And I thought, well, let's just see what it's like. And so I logged on to the website. I chose a piece. I think it was a Mozart piano sonata. I pressed the button to translate it. And within 10 minutes, I was sitting at the piano beginning to learn it. And that, I thought, with the contrast of having a piece ready to start learning in 10 minutes, and it could have been less if I was quicker at it, because I was exploring the website as well, because it was the first time, rather than phoning an organization who may or may not have had the piece, and then waiting a couple of days in the post if they did have it, or waiting a number of weeks if they didn't have it. I thought the contrast was amazing. Now, was the transcription perfect? No, it wasn't. But was it good enough for what I needed to do? Definitely it was. And that
What
was
format were you using? Excuse me, I interrupted.
Do you know, I think the format
PDF?
was irrelevant. No. The source format, I believe, was Music XML.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's an important point, because a
It
lot
is
of
a
people here
very-
want
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
download a free PDF file, and they're like, oh, yeah, I got PDF. And they're sending it to our Russian librarians. We had a show with the Russian Braille music librarian here, and she told us that, like, I'm tired of telling people that we are not currently able to automatically translate PDF to Braille formats. Please stop sending me links with free downloadable PDF, because that just not works yet.
Yeah.
It might eventually. So that's why I made it a point that you did not use a PDF file, right?
That's right. It was a Music XML file, which I found on the
And you
website to start
converted it with what? With MuseScore or with something?
So this was right at the early days. Nowadays, I would check it in a MuseScore, make sure all the notes are correct, and yes, that is a necessary stage.
It is, yeah.
And then I would probably put it into one of the other programs called SMB, the Salmai Braille Converter.
The Vietnamese.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one. And then I would check that and correct that. And then I would either manually, because there's always things in the music file which you think, oh, that's interesting. Why has that happened? And then you have to go and check. Oh, yes, that's why. That was engraved wrongly. Or you might say, oh, I know the program can't cope with that particular case. And these are automated programs, and they are brilliant. But still, you need a human transcriber for some of the really complicated or weird cases.
I'm sorry to. Probably it's too. Yana, I guess you will guide me if I'm going too deep.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you, James? Could you, for example, could you quote an example of those things? Like how would you correct? Because I cannot imagine if you hear a recording and you spot on a wrong note, like in the middle of something really complicated, like I don't know, Chopin or something like that, or Mozart, even Beethoven.
Yes.
Like
so spotting wrong notes, it's often just listening to it. Yes. And this is, of course, I'm only listening to the audio, so I will not be able to spot, for example, that, I don't know, a diminuendo has been put in the wrong place, or a staccato dot has been missed. I will not be able to spot that just by listening to the music XML in MuseScore. But for example, where there is an obvious mistake, like a sharp sign has been missed, and it just doesn't sound right. You think, oh, of course, that's definitely wrong. Or there was a Haydn sonata I was listening to, and there was a run of 5 notes, which is a print thing. They put it one line too high, so it was a third out from what it should be. And it was easy to spot that sort of thing against the recording and so on. Well, it's just one of those things. These things do happen. These things do happen.
But I'm just sitting here and thinking, you have to have a good ear to learn to spot that. But I mean,
yes,
not everyone does. I mean, I don't. And there's a chance that I would be playing that the same piece from that automatic transcription,
and getting it wrong, absolutely,
it completely wrong, and it's like, well, thank you so much, you screwed up another piece of music. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, we're still in that stage where you have to ask sighted assistants or somebody to make sure that.
Or a perfect pitch assist.
Yeah, pretty much.
Perfect pitch is a wonderful thing, certainly. And again, it depends on what do you want the music for. I am really, I guess you would say, an amateur musician. My main instrument is the piano. And so
was mine, yeah.
So, I just mainly play for pleasure. I don't... I'm not a professional pianist. I don't give paying concerts. I don't do exams anymore.
So you don't play Chopin?
I do play a little bit of Chopin, but not the really big,
because
heavy stuff.
I think about, those nocturnes and studies where you have those rhythmic groups with written 27 above or 20 something, huge, super mega fast things. So you don't do that.
I don't often play them. No, but I haven't learned one of those, no.
But then my next question then would be, if someone is performing professionally, working, would Access to Work or any organization support them by checking their music to make sure that they are doing the right job? Or would RNIB support the professional musicians or that sort of thing?
So if you're getting a professional musician wanting a professional score, then I would suggest the first step would be go to the publisher to get the official score rather than what I did, just download something from the internet.
I see.
So that would be the first step, to make sure that you have got the correct score and that it is engraved properly. Now, a reputable publisher will do that, no problem.
Do you have
And
any
then,
chance to get like music XML? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
sometimes increasingly, yes, I think, Sarah.
Yes, this is a nice side topic. So I'd like to come back to it about working with publishers and Music XML and engraving. But maybe when James has finished his explanation.
Yeah, and then if you want a professionally transcribed piece, then go and find a professional music transcriber. And of course, RNIB has some of those, and we can still produce music transcribed officially, etc., etc. So yeah, that would be my suggestion if you want the professional treatment for a professional piece of music. I am an amateur, definitely, and so yes, if there's a professionally transcribed piece available, I'll take it. If there isn't, then I'm very happy to use these tools, and they do a pretty good job.
Okay.
I think the same would apply if you were setting an exam piece.
Yes.
So anything that requires absolute detail, it's worth getting that checked. Yes. Automated tools are great for lots of things, but nothing's ever going to be 100%.
No.
I could not digest your stance about Braille dying out 10 years ago. So for me, at least from environment where I come from, musician is, I'm sorry, I will be harsh now, I'm quoting, it's not my words. Musician is the to go away for a blind person. You know what I mean? Like most blind people would be either musicians or some other. Like if you're blind, you have to play something.
Yes, so it's opposite to what you expect, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, but also, Braille also was at risk. Lots of people were talking about digital Braille, talking books. Maybe Braille isn't necessary anymore, and that became a big topic of conversation worldwide. Again, around the same time. But we were in a position in this country, and certainly in others too, where blind children were not being offered music as a subject at
that
school,
was my question.
Or
so
at university,
no Braille and music, or no Braille and no music?
Music was fine if they could do it without Braille.
By ear,
Okay. But if as soon as anybody said, but I'm going to need things to read with my fingers,
well, that's it,
it was dying out. But we've seen a small reversal in that already in the last year or so. So I think if you have a musical aptitude and you want to be studying music now, today, in any country, you're in a better position than you would have been even 5 years ago.
That feels like it, yes.
Absolutely. And that doesn't just go for Braille, but it also goes for things like composition in mainstream products. So, for example, earlier this year, I composed a piece of piano music, and I'm thrilled that I was able to type it into MuseScore, and I can now produce the print copy of that piece of music for somebody else to play. And I've also, of course, put it through SMB, and I've now got the Braille score as well.
And I think that's what's been one of the exciting things for us, is that we've started focusing on Braille music because it was such a small, essential part of musicians' lives. But very quickly, we turned into accessible music more generally. So this is going now into the importance of Music XML.
Yeah.
What we discovered.
I want to backtrack a little bit. Excuse me. Go on, Sarah. Go on.
No, carry on.
I would like to backtrack a little bit. I'm quoting from your website, and here it says, paper music braille will be vital for many musicians for many years to come, and we wish to protect this service in a cost-effective way, as well as improving file conversions, file format standards, and opportunities for international file sharing. I want to focus on paper braille. We have talked so much about great opportunities for using Braille digitally. Yes, now many people, okay, not many, but more than before, have refreshable Braille displays. There's MuseScore, all this blah, blah, blah. Why are you saying that paper Braille is vital, is going to be vital for many years to come? Isn't it counterproductive, because it's quite expensive to publish, it's quite expensive to distribute, you know, to everything. It sounds expensive.
That's a really good question. And again, it was one of the things that was at risk, I think, at the beginning of the, well, 10 years ago. Let's just use 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a starting point sort of thing, yeah.
And digital Braille displays are wonderful, and digital files are wonderful. But all of us, whatever our level of sight, whatever our ability with technology, sometimes need paper. We need things in a format that suits us for the thing we're doing.
I agree, actually, because you have to learn the Braille display. You have to learn to use it, and you have to manage to find the sources to afford the Braille display, because nobody, regardless of, you have like Orbit Reader, which is slightly cheaper version from, let's say, Mantis or what other human.
And also you have only one line.
That was my point. That was going to be my point. Braille displays predominantly at the moment, and I'm qualifying that quite a lot, are single line displays. And there are a number of people who like singing in a choir.
Yes,
and
like
when
me,
you're singing, you need both the words and the music.
You do.
And traditionally, they are displayed on two separate lines in Braille, just as they are really in print, with the words underneath the music in the print and words above the music in certainly the UK. So you need to be able to have both lines. Some people will learn the music and read the words. Other people will learn the words and read the music. And some people who are really clever will try and do both at the same time. So paper Braille is great for that. Another instance, say if you're in an exam and you have to follow a score where you've got, say, a string quartet, and you need to identify what is the cadence at the end of bar 49 or whatever it is. You need multiple instruments shown at once on multiple lines, and that's very difficult on a Braille display. Let's say you're in an orchestra and you have your part in Braille, and the conductor says, let's go from rehearsal mark C, or can we go from bar 97? And you've got to be able to find that really, really quickly. And yes, you can do it on a Braille display with a find command, and then you have to fiddle around to find out was the line above or below, etc., etc.
And that might freeze. The Braille display might freeze. Or the
Braille displays can crash, etc. Don't get me wrong, Braille displays are wonderful things, and they've really got their place. I've got one right here in front of this computer, and there's a place for technology, and there's also a place for paper.
But what about the money issue? You know, obviously printing is really super expensive usually. I mean, it is definitely more expensive than producing just a e-Braille or digital Braille score. Where does the money come? I'm not going to say where does the money come from, but I mean, isn't that a reason to say no to paper Braille, you know, because of the financial situation can be quite, difficult, and people might say, or some organizations that provide Braille scores, they might say, oh, we're not going to do it because, I mean, it's so expensive, and we prefer to just provide digital Braille files, and that's it.
So I can only speak for the RNIB here, and only in the UK here. The RNIB has most definitely not said no to paper Braille. So if you want paper Braille from the RNIB, you can get paper Braille from the RNIB. If you want digital Braille from the RNIB, yeah, we can give you that too.
And I think
will I be paid?
That's true of all the blindness libraries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And as for paying for it, so if you order something from RNIB, there will be a
Yeah.
charge, and you pay for
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But I would argue, well, we have argued with, not argued, we have presented the view to libraries that if we can give you a cost saving to make transcription quicker and more efficient, and we have better file sharing internationally, you're spending less on transcription, so you can get
Yes.
more to your patrons.
Yes.
So you can use your highly skilled transcribers to do the things that everybody wants and get them into your library, or they could concentrate on professional level music scores.
Yeah.
But the actual cost of the braille embossing is very small compared to the cost of the actual skilled transcription work.
That's correct. That is
Yes.
absolutely true. I mean, a sheet of braille paper is not going to break the bank, hopefully. And I should also have said, although if you order stuff from RNIB, you pay, there's also a library which is free to the RNIB customers.
How do you can we talk about file sharing? You said just now, yeah, Braille. How does that work? How can you who can have access to the file that are already available? Or it's
And I
not
will
accepted?
jump in. And if I'm not an organization, I'm just a particular user. Can I
Individual.
just can I just get those files?
So I'll take this one with both my DAISY hat and my Accessible Books Consortium hat.
Okay.
About 10 years ago, there were very few opportunities for blindness libraries to share their files. Lots of the format issues were complicated because Spanish scores couldn't be read in somewhere else. A score produced in Australia couldn't be read in Switzerland, for example. We set up through DAISY Music Braille Project a music braille production network, and any blindness library or transcription agency worldwide was invited to join and talk about the issues common to all of us. And we developed some good practice for creating files that were going to be used internationally across borders. And this meant that we didn't necessarily produce scores to suit our own country requirements. They were a little bit wider than that so that more people could read them. So instead of 12 libraries producing Mozart Requiem, all differently, which is a lot of expertise, perhaps 2 or 3 agencies could produce them in different formats and then share those with everybody. Since then, the Marrakesh Treaty was implemented in most countries, and this allows for the cross-border exchange of accessible files without contacting publishers. So it's a legal framework that has to be implemented into national law, and then those agencies who become what's known as authorized entities with the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, can become part of the Accessible Books Consortium and their global book service. Now, this means that there's a legal framework operating under the Marrakesh Treaty so that authorized entities producing accessible materials can share their files with each other very easily. So even up to about 10 years ago, agencies were having to email each other and say, do you have a copy of this? And then wait for somebody to answer. Maybe ship them an embossed copy, or maybe send them a digital file. Now, you can, if you're an authorized entity, you can log on to the ABC Global Book Service. You can immediately search for accessible books in any form, in loads of formats, but also music braille files. And if it's there, you just download it. So there are a lot of music files already on the ABC Global Book Service. And these are for libraries, authorized entities to access. In some countries, their authorized entities have made it possible for their patrons to access the Global Book Service directly. And this beneficiary access, as it's called, gives you as end users access to that collection, that global collection of files, of books and files, directly. But your authorized entity in your country has to be giving you those that account to the Global Book Service for that to happen.
Isn't it a little bit outdated to be using authorized basically my library to get what I want from an online service? Wouldn't it make more sense to go to your website, for example, ABC Book, accessible book stuff,
and get it directly from you?
Yes, the way I would go to a MuseScore website. And download the file. I would, for instance, be willing to pay a subscription fee the way I do on MuseScore and download the file at my own convenience and without having to contact my library, for instance, or whatever.
Well, it does work in the way you describe. The only difference is you have to first be a member of the library who is a member of the Global Book Service.
They have to recognize you basically. Yes. That if you log in, you have to choose your organization, and then they have to the website has to have you as a member, so you can choose.
But why is it necessary? Why is that still necessary? That's what
I'm saying. It's like an intermediary, like a thing.
Because
it's to protect the rights holders. So under the Marrakesh Treaty, we're allowed to share these files across borders.
That's right.
On the understanding that the only people who have access to it are legitimate persons with print disabilities.
That's right, because not everyone ratified the Marrakesh Treaty.
So the only way the Accessible Books Consortium and the Global Book Service knows if the end user is a legitimate person with a visual impairment or a print disability is that they belong to a library who is part of it, and they do the eligibility checks, they look after you, and all they do is set you up with an account, and then once you've got an account, you log on to the Global Book Service just in the way you just described, Lena.
And what about what countries? I mean, okay. I guess my question is pretty much about Russia. Is Russia in the list of the countries that can have access to accessible books?
I don't know the exact details of each country, but if you have your national library or national libraries can easily contact us at ABC and find out what your status is. I genuinely don't know the status of Russia and the Marrakesh Treaty, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on that here.
Okay, so they first have to ratify the
there,
treaty,
but I would not it's not 100%.
I see.
Sarah, isn't there a website page on ABC Books where you can check the list of the organizations which have signed up?
Sarah, are you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me still?
Sorry. Yeah.
She's checking.
Checking, but
I'm sure there's a page on.
Yes, there is. If you look for www.accessiblebooksconsortium.org.
Okay.
Wow, that's a huge one.
I can look up the Russian Federation is indeed a member. They may not yet be eligible to, in order to give patrons direct access to the Global Book Service, they also have to have uploaded their files. So they have to uploaded their collection.
So you have to share something, yeah? I mean, each country has to share something, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I guess all the European Union is there, right? More or less.
Oh, there are lots of countries there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, too many for me to count quickly.
But not all countries have yet signed the beneficiary agreement, have they?
That's right.
So there's like two stages. They're signing up to the Accessible Books Consortium with your authorized entities, and then the second stage, the authorized entity does the beneficiary agreement so that patrons can self-service.
My question, probably the most painful when I prepared to that show, my most painful question is formats. Is it still BRF, still ASCII Braille, still the need of adjusting your screen reader to various tables and so on and so forth to have the files readable on the Braille display? Or are there is there any move towards something more universal like Unicode Braille, like with eBraille 1.0?
Can I give you a real quick tip?
Yeah.
If you have the Salmi Braille program, which is a free download,
Yes, it is.
you can transform any BRF into Unicode Braille in a few simple clicks.
Yeah, I know. I can write a simple console utility in 10 minutes. That's not a problem. I mean, for me.
For you, yes. I was talking generally, so the Salmi can do it. But yes, I think most files are still ASCII Braille. Sarah?
Yeah, I would bow to your superior knowledge of this, James. There has been a lot of requests for Unicode Braille to become more widely used. Not widely used, more widely supported by Braille displays and note takers for this very reason.
Yeah, and we mustn't forget, of course, eBraille will put an end to this international different. I'm going to use the old-fashioned DOS from the 80s word code page problem, which effectively what it is. Effectively what it is with all these different Braille encodings.
But my impression was that unlike natural languages, where you have different Braille codes not only for different languages, but sometimes for the same language before UAB at least. You have like American grade 2, English, British grade 2, whatever. My impression was that Music Braille was more uniform. Like, I tried to download a file from France, from China, from the UK, from the US and whatnot, and I could basically read it. Is it wrong, or am I too superficial in this?
No, it is true. The Braille music code is the only global code which is basically the same around the world. So yes, you are right. You would be able to understand a file produced in France, China, the UK, Denmark, wherever, Russia, no problem. However, the layout may be different. Now, there are at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 different layouts for Braille music. 2 of the major ones are bar over bar and section by section.
And that is the main difference, right? I mean, there's not quite much of a difference in the code.
Yes, so all the actual code, all the notes, they'll be the same. All your signs for
like seek-waver is seek-waver, sharp is sharp, flat is flat.
That's right, yes.
But what do you mean by a layout?
So layout, let's give you an example. If you had a piece written in section by section, you would have a paragraph of just the right hand. For maybe 8 bars.
It's like Russian way, Ksenia.
And then
we used to have that in Soviet Union.
Oh, okay. And then you'd have underneath the paragraph of 8 bars, you'd have another paragraph with the left hand of those same 8 bars. Now that is section by section, and I would be very interested as a sideline to find out all about your section by section format from another project that I'm involved in at the moment. Bar over bar is what is predominantly used in English-speaking countries and several others as well. You would have one line of the right hand, and underneath it,
one
line, not necessarily one measure.
My God, that would simplify my life so much, because when I was learning music, you see, I would have to learn couple of pages of right hand, then left hand, then somehow learn how to join them together, and that was the most painful for me, because it's just so
people are different. For me, it's easier. Because it's
Well,
a
you have the
phrase.
decent ear. I have like none.
Okay.
So
So-
please, I mean,
So
But
I
you
really
know,
do.
if
I really do think part of it is what you're used to.
yeah,
Yes.
Part of it also is what kind of music are you learning? So
right.
if, for example, you're learning something which has got lots of very nice flowing lines,
That's right.
and you don't need to have all the full chord to make sense of the
That's
music,
correct.
then having just the one hand is fine. But if you have, for example, I don't know, block chords, and if you just read the top and the soprano and alto line effectively, it can sound horrible on its own. And you need those
Yes.
lower parts to make sense of the music.
That's
Or
right.
like counterpoint,
Yes.
like
I
Baroque.
was just now thinking that I am learning the Bach, one of his fugues, and
good luck. Which
I
one?
am
Yeah.
book 2, well-tempered clavier, book 2, G major.
G major. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it is 3-part fugue.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Hard enough still to learn.
it's got, yeah, it is. I've just started, and when the first few measures are okay because it's just the first part playing. Because for those who might not know, a fugue starts by playing just one voice, and then the second voice joins in, and then the third voice joins in, and however many voices there are, they play one theme. They start by playing the main subject, and then there's counter subject. And so when the voices join in, it becomes increasingly difficult to understand, how to join them, because well, it's not straightforward,
It's Bach.
because it's
Of
not like
course.
melody and accompaniment. Yes, it's
Yes.
polyphony, and you have to spot the subject, you have to spot the counter subject, and all this stuff. And my point is that when I was using Braille display, and in my opinion, incidentally, learning bar over bar on a Braille display, for me, this is the most comfortable thing, because, I see right here the measure of the right hand and then the left hand. But in the section by section, I have a paper. I have
No
this in-
way, no way. I mean, that's why I stopped, because for me, my brain just like
Well, it was just,
literally
of course,
yeah,
it's all
it's like a
subjective,
breaking, like your
yeah.
brain literally gets so tired when you. And the thing is, sometimes what the teachers would do, they're not going to play you the music from the beginning. You just say, okay, you're going to play this. Okay, we're learning right hand, then the left hand. And then when you actually join in the hands together, you don't get that idea. What are you trying to play? What you're trying to tell me? So you kind of
I
jumping
think now it's
from
easier.
to the unknown, and then I think for me, the Braille display would have been as well one of the good ways.
Ksenia, I would comfort you. There is a sighted musician, absolutely, totally sighted. It's a very famous on YouTube, like in a narrow niche. He's an organist. He's called Fraser Gartshaw from Scotland. Now he's in Germany. He's absolutely sighted, and he's like, I cannot stand counterpoint because my brains go like.
Anyway, we
Yeah.
have kind of strayed away, because that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the
Well,
Well,
subject.
actually, I think
Yeah.
we've got to a point where we're almost talking about the value of having a music XML file that you can then
Yes,
convert and
Yes,
represent in a
that's
way
it.
you
that
have
suits
actually
you.
been quiet, and so could
Yeah, I
you?
was going to ask you to talk a little bit, because you're just
Could
sitting
you
here
talk
and just
more about
thinking, why
music
am I here?
XML?
Probably,
No, I
Yeah.
think, that I guess that is where I come into the conversation really. And like Sarah was saying, I think the conversation around music Braille, that's totally where the original intention was, and it still is. But also we've broadened out the conversation to talk about other formats as well, because the inherent flexibility that you have in a music XML file that that's got all the musical information inside it. It's not like a PDF where it's just a flattened image of the music effectively. It doesn't prescribe how it should be displayed. So actually from that one file, you can have many different outputs to suit the individual reading requirements of the musician. So for example, you could take that music XML file and use a Braille converter like Salmai, and you could set the settings, maybe even depending on the piece of music that you're attempting to learn. It might be that you might prefer bar over bar for one piece, section by section for another, but you could just set the settings to give you what you need from that one file. Equally, if you need it in large print or modified stave notation, you could create a print score that meets your reading requirements that way using that same intermediary file. So I think, yeah, that's just an example of how the conversation has widened a bit in the last couple of years. And I think why it's so amazing to have not an official library, but a collection like MuseScore.com, where there are literally millions of scores that have been contributed by community members that you can download as XML and display in the way that suits you. I think that's an amazing development.
It goes even further than that, I think, Jay. So you've given some great examples there, but you can go further than that. So different musicians need different sizes of large print or modified stave notation, and you can do that. You can adjust, for example, I want thicker lines. I want the notes to be closer or wider apart. I want you can do all of this from it. Yeah, I want it bigger. I want it smaller. I want to use a sans serif font for this, or I want a particular font for the other. I can do all that. In Braille, let's assume you have a new learner of Braille music and you present them with a piece of music, and even though it might be a fairly simple piece of music, there are all sorts of interesting signs like slurs and repeat marks, maybe lots of directions and fingering, all sorts of things. You can turn some of that off if you wish. And then you can make a really clean Braille music copy with just the notes, because that's all they've learnt at the moment. And then you can gradually begin to increase the range of musical signs which are shown. Now, I want to also mention another shameless plug again for SMB. They have introduced what do they call it? Music navigation mode. And I don't know if anybody has played with this, but I think this is another very interesting feature. You can see on your Braille display a bar of music, and at the same time, it will play it for you with a metronome if you want.
Like in MuseScore.
Like in MuseScore, but it's a bar at a time, and in much greater detail the Braille music from Braille than it currently exists in the MuseScore. And you can navigate and you can play it at different speeds. And again, it's another really interesting tool for the toolbox.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting when you have a flexible file like that. You're using notation, printed or embossed notation, as one of the tools in the toolbox, as you say, James, alongside opening up in something like SMB or MuseScore and being able to play it, being able to, arrow through different elements. Say you find something in the Braille, oh, that looks a bit weird at bar 20. Let's go to bar 20 in MuseScore and see what's in there, see what the individual elements are in the notation. Maybe they've not come out correctly, but yeah, let's go and have a closer look in the music XML file and see what's there.
So did I get the idea right? So I mean, in XML, you can arrange your music, like you can have left hand and right hand together, or you have it as a layout, like different sections. Is that correct?
Yeah, so XML doesn't prescribe any of that stuff, actually. It's basically like a recipe for your music. It says this piece has these instruments and notes that all happen in this order, but it doesn't prescribe in any way how that should be presented to the reader. It's a list of instructions, effectively, of the different components in that piece. So yeah, a program like MuseScore will by default show you it as standard print notation, but you could apply a style, like James was saying, tailored to your own requirements if you read large print, or you could take that same recipe.
HTML and CSS, Ksenia.
Exactly so. Yeah, exactly. So it's all the core pieces, the core information that you need to play a piece. But yeah, it doesn't prescribe how it should be displayed, which is why it's so great for accessibility
purposes. So you mark it down yourself, like in XML. You make
you can
tag it, or
so
or,
I mean,
the software does, like a MuseScore.
Yeah, so MuseScore will render it by default, in the way that most standard music readers would expect, using kind of the standard formatting in MuseScore is similar to what if you bought a sheet of music from a shop. That's how it will lay it out, but that's not the only way that you can display music XML.
And then if you had, for example, a Braille music translation program, you can choose what the translation settings are. So you can have, I want this bar over bar, and I want so many lines in a page, and I want so many characters on a line, and I don't want to see, I don't know, Boeing marks, for example. Or you could say, I want this in section by section format, and I want 4 bars to each section, or whatever. You know, you can generally do that sort of thing.
I see.
Very
Okay.
flexible.
Hmm.
Can I talk a little bit about how we're getting better music XML files
yeah,
from
did
these
you want
Sarah,
to
different
you
talk
have
about
just read my mind. I was
yeah.
I opened my mouth to ask you this question. Yeah, and
Yeah.
how do you get in touch with the publishers, and how does that work? Walk us through this process. You know,
So when
how
I
you,
started and I said 10 years ago, the tools weren't great and the standards weren't great, the notation tools weren't great. So all of these things that we're talking about are things that have been driven by the DAISY Music Project. We influenced Music XML at the W3C to make sure that Music XML contained what we needed for conversion into Braille. So then when software tools, say like Sibelius, MuseScore, Finale, Dorico, that create music scores for sighted readers, when they are exporting to Music XML, we then had to influence them to use XML properly in their export so that we could use those files properly. So once XML was sorted, then we tackled the notation tools, and now they're exporting proper XML, more or less. And MuseScore we've worked closest with MuseScore, which is good because it's open source, it's free, and they now have all these accessibility things built in. So once the notation tools were producing better XML, then we were able to go to publishers and engravers. So engravers, when we talk about engravers in music notation terms, we're talking about the people who set the original print music. So they might take a handwritten score, or they might be a composer typing it straight into their notation tool. And oftentimes in the past, they make it look lovely for print, but it might be rubbish underneath. So when Jay talks about the semantics of the music being represented in the XML file, if I, as a sighted user, just plonk a dynamic marking on the screen here, and I drag that over there, and I make this look bold, that isn't structurally sound music. That's not grammatically correct. Whereas if I anchor things, I insert a symbol, anchored it to a particular note, I show the range of a dynamic marking, I label a piece of text as a dynamic marking, for example, then the score understands that that is really a dynamic marking. It's not a random piece of text. So when it exports as music XML, and then when we look at it for Braille or for large print, the score can be represented properly because it understands that was a dynamic marking. It isn't just a random F piece of text in the middle of a bar, for example. So we came up with a beautiful set of guidelines for engraving. So when you're creating a score, follow the DAISY guidelines for engraving, and you will be using the tool properly. So when you get XML out, it's got the right information for accessibility. So then we did some trials with engravers, and they do indeed produce good quality scores when they follow the DAISY guidelines. Hooray! The next thing we were able to do was very exciting for us. We approached mainstream music publishers. So real world publishers who produce music for exams or for music lessons or curriculum. They produce choral music, orchestral and instrument music. And we said, there's a whole group of people here that you're not serving. And we explained to them the problems of giving out a PDF score and why that's no use to us in our sector. And we explained the benefits of Music XML. We taught them how to do good engravings. And then we've done trials with them. And Jay and I co-chair what we call the Accessible Music Publishing Action Group. We've got something like 20 mainstream publishers, as well as libraries of the blind who produce music braille, talking together, and professional engraving services. And we are all working towards being able to, for publishers to share music XML files with customers that are well engraved and convert well into accessible formats. And we've had a pretty good response from them. We expected a little bit of resistance, but we haven't had it. Almost all of them have been very positive. They've shared their files with us, their notation files. We've checked them, we've given them feedback, they've improved them, and they're setting up now policies in their publishing houses worldwide in some cases, so that if you as an end user ring them or email them and say, I'd like to buy a score, or I've got a score and I need an accessible format, they should now increasingly be able to give you a well engraved music XML file. And so that is a really great place for us to be now, so that you won't feel in a few years' time that you're only getting PDFs which are no good. You'll get something digital to work from. And if you listen to some more of the Sound Without Sight podcast webinars that are on the website, you'll hear a professional musician, James Risdon, talk about how he was asked to play at the proms, the BBC proms in London, not London, but part of the BBC proms season, and how he prepared. And he talks about how easy it was for him to get this score and read it within minutes, compared to years previous to that, where it might have taken months to get a score in his hands. And now it was a matter of minutes.
Well, you said that you contacted publishers and you said basically, folks, you're not serving, there's a group of people that you're not serving, that you should do that. I'm just kind of curious, are we that invisible that they don't know about blind people that can be musicians? Why do you think this question didn't arise earlier? I mean, why do you think they needed a prod, if you'll excuse me? Why did they need... Is it because they didn't care, or they simply didn't know how to go about it, or what do you think?
It was ignorance. They wanted, lots of them wanted to serve people, and they thought they were doing that by sharing PDFs.
I see.
And to be honest, until a couple of years ago, there was no better alternative for them.
Right.
They didn't have engraving skills. They didn't have music XML files. They didn't have notation tools that would export files properly. So all the things that DAISY's been able to do in the last few years have led to this position where everything is in place for publishers now to be able to offer them.
Yeah, it's a change in workflow. I think some of it is being stuck in tradition where, and this was across all kinds of publishing historically, where creating accessible versions was almost, you did that after you'd created the mainstream version. So I guess what we've been trying to do is advocate for a different production process that supports accessible outputs from the start. So it's been really useful actually to have, looking at literary trade publishing, the EPUB standard, for example, as a flexible file, something that exists in that world, and to say, we need to catch up in music because we do. And to have music XML as a really useful file to offer the same kind of solution. That's kind of how the conversation has gone.
Textbooks, however, are something else.
Yeah.
So our next challenge is to try and work with publishers and technologists and file formats to work out how to create a music textbook with integrated text and musical excerpts in music XML.
You mean like music theory thing, for example, yeah?
Yeah, or a school textbook or a university level textbook where you've got descriptive, narrative, normal text, and you have music which typically is received by the publishers as a PDF or a JPEG. And all the publisher does is put the JPEG in the middle of the print and print it. Whereas what we're saying is we want maybe XML or EPUB text, and then we want the music XML where it's music, and we want the book to be packaged in one package and then read in one software tool. So in the next few years, we're hoping to be able to show how that will be possible.
It's not possible at the moment, right? Is it like, is it like a dream, or is there actually work being done about
There's
it?
work being done.
Wow.
So we're hoping to learn from the trade book and educational press. So they are working on how to present maths and science textbooks in exactly this way.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot to do that, and artificial intelligence is also
AI.
contributing to this, because
see.
it can start stripping down a textbook into its component parts.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then sending each part to the relevant transcription tool or artificial AI model to return it, package it all back up again. So I think we're going to see some interesting developments. Well, we're seeing them already for textbooks in maths and science already. And I think over the next 2 years, we'll see it for music textbooks too.
That's fantastic. But I wanted to ask you one interesting, probably question, because we know that there are, when we're talking about blindness and jobs, there are not that many jobs out there. Well, I mean, there are, but this is always a problematic subject all the time when, you know, it's hard to find a job. But I'm thinking maybe with the help of AI or any tools, would you think that a blind person could become a music editor, like a music proofreading, like an editor or something like that? Would that be another opportunity for people that are interested in music and looking for jobs? Or is it still, you think, the sighted assistance is still largely required to proofread the each work, sort of thing?
That's a really good question.
It's a really interesting question, and I think it depends what you mean by proofreading. So if you're proofreading print, you need to be able to see the actual final effect. So we can certainly proof the semantics of everything. Yes, that's been marked properly as a crescendo hairpin. But visually, we wouldn't necessarily be able to say it's in exactly the right place. And actually, it would be better if those two bars were together on the same line. We wouldn't necessarily be able to do that.
No, I mean, let's say, maybe editing XML, or for example, with the help of AI, say, okay, I have a scanned print, compare the visually impaired person would probably have a prompt, say, compare these two documents, put it into the Braille format, or, compare both, find the errors, and then maybe proofread the Braille, the version, and see that if there are mistakes and correct them. No, I mean, maybe that way. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, quite possibly. Because one of our colleagues on the DAISY Music Braille Project, Mr. Hu Haipeng from China.
Yeah, he was here.
Oh, good. Yeah. So he is a blind transcriber, and he does exactly that. He looks at the music XML underneath in all the detail, and this is something most people don't ever want to do. It's not something for everybody, for sure.
You have to be very patient.
But he is expert at looking at the XML and understanding how that will then present in Braille. So if more people are interested in doing that, I'm sure you're right that AI gives us an opportunity to automate some of that.
Because they can ideally, with the help of AI or anything, because that's going to just develop to have an OCR, have a print and OCR, maybe accurately enough, and you can just compare and then see to proofread and see to make it better, because I'm just thinking, because AI is becoming our tool generally for various things. You can do presentations or generate the pictures or something like that already. And it's only a year and a half, literally nearly 2 years. But I'm thinking, if the aim of AI generally, I'm hoping, right, within a year or 2 or 3 or, well, doesn't matter, to become our assistant, then why not? teach it to become my secretary, to say, here is the file, compare them, or do the
check it
OCR,
against.
or that's what I mean, because that may be an opportunity. And maybe there is maybe the way we in Blind Consortium or somewhere to think about training AI for these things, and to see how AI would be the assistance for music editing. Because if we're not there to participate in that, sort of in training the AI, because it feels to me sometimes that AI is there but not there with us and for us, because it's been trained by, well, we have to maybe think about doing the groups with the training AI is serving the blind people, or some of the things like that. I'm just throwing ideas. I'm not saying we have to now go and do it, but I'm just generally thinking, why not?
Well, I think it hasn't quite been framed yet from an accessibility perspective, but that piece of work, which is using AI to recognize, music from a printed book or a PDF, that's already happening. There are some tools already on the market that are released, that are developing all the time to get better and better. I think music recognition is more difficult than it seems like it would be. For many different reasons. It's not the same as recognizing text, which is computationally much more easy. But yeah, I think that the tools are getting smarter every day. I know there is active development. I think a particularly popular one is Music. So that is an AI tool that can take a PDF and make music XML from it.
How do you spell that? How does that?
NEWZIK, Music.
Oh, never heard of that. I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
And how good is it?
I've not actually had a chance to use it properly yet. I've had some good feedback. I mean, it's always good with an asterisk. You always have to check.
But sure. You have to. You can't just say, oh, because we don't have a lot of time. I have one very important issue to discuss. You've talked a lot about raising awareness among publishers. Among specialists who work with files, who work with music material itself. Does your company, your organization, raise awareness among teachers? Because in our country, I don't know about England or UK, in our countries, many music teachers either refuse to work with blind kids because they don't know Braille, and because the blind kid doesn't read, or they do decide to work with the blind kid, but only by ear, basically with the teacher plays or records something on tape, and the kid is learning just by ear, not being able to read music. So do you do any work to raise awareness among teachers?
We certainly do.
Can I I'll introduce you both, because then you can take up the baton. The last piece of the last requirement we came to from the Music Braille Project research was teaching and learning. And DAISY specializes particularly in tools, standards, good practice for publishing. But we recognized that there was a decline in the number of teachers who were aware of Music Braille, who had the skills to teach it, and there weren't enough resources available worldwide to be shared easily. So we knew this was a problem, but we couldn't attack it in our project. What we did do, though, in collaboration with Jay at RNIB and Sound Without Sight, is we hosted a roundtable on teaching music Braille, teaching and learning music Braille. And we got a room full of people, a virtual room full of people together to talk about some of the barriers that they were facing with increasing teacher awareness and sharing resources, but also some of the positive things that we could do collectively in a global setting to increase the capacity of music teaching and the opportunities for people to learn for themselves. So we've got the notes of that meeting, which will be shareable, and we'll be encouraging people to try and take up that agenda. But I know that both Jay and James can talk about this, so I'll hand to them now.
Yeah, well, I think that the barrier that we see in mainstream education, at least, is that Braillists, people wanting to learn music at a young age, it's quite low incidence in the mainstream setting, which is obviously where most music teachers are based. So I think what we have to wrestle with is the challenge of, I guess, accepting that it's not realistic for every music teacher in the UK to have a deep understanding of music braille and be able to read it fluently. So I guess what we focus on doing is having a strong network within the UK education system of specialists who can support with teaching and learning as and when it's required. So yes, we at RNIB in the music team, we will support any teacher who comes to us, and James is a big part of that support network. There's also a network of education specialists across the country called Qualified Teachers for Children and Young People with Vision Impairment. And yes, so they are spread geographically throughout the UK. And among that network, there are some music specialists who, again, support teachers as and when required. But yeah, we would love to see more and more teachers have a general awareness of Braille music and modified stave notation, for example. So yeah, a large part of our job is trying to propagate that awareness on a base level so that people at least know that we exist to support in more depth when that's required. Yeah, James, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the negative. One of the problems, as well as what Jay has said, is sometimes you have a support worker working with a student and they have a double barrier. Not only do they not know Braille music, they don't actually know print music either. They don't play an instrument. And so that's actually quite a difficult one to solve. And that in itself immediately brings barriers. Oh, music's really complicated, which basically means I don't understand music. It's a different question to solve. On the positive, as Jay said, there are several people who are specialists and there are resources out there. The RNIB has a network where they do continuous professional development, and I'm pretty sure one of the sessions coming up soon is a music one. So that's going to be another excellent resource for teachers and so on to go on. I'm also really encouraged. I know it's possibly near to the start of the academic year here in the UK, but I've had quite a number of people, certainly last month, asking, how do we learn Braille music? Now, that's really
Teachers
encouraging.
or what people, like teachers or just people who are interested in music?
I think they were mostly teachers.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
Right.
It
great.
is really, really good news. And another thing we have in the UK is what we call the Gardeners Trust Braille Music Literacy Awards, which is a bit of a mouthful, but basically it's an annual, if you like, assessment that we do, and people learning Braille music, any age, can now say, oh, I like to be tested on Braille music. I think I'm on level 2 or whatever. And we'll give them various tasks to do with Braille music, and we'll tell them how they did, and the best one at each level gets a prize as well. So that's a wonderful thing to get involved with.
And just a little plug to Sound Without Sight. So on soundwithoutsight.org, we've got our Braille Music Hub page, which is basically a list of resources. So it links to resources from RNIB, from the DAISY Consortium, and a few other places as well, including our own content that we've produced, webinars. So James, you've presented a couple on MuseScore and SoundMy Braille Converter. So yeah, could be a useful little page to find if you've not found it yet. It's the Braille Music Hub on Sound Without Sight.
And that also includes, I think, Jay, the list that you mentioned, that stuff Daisy did. We pulled together, we made a directory of online resources for teaching and learning music Braille. And when we've looked at other pages previously that list resources like this, they just list a big lump, a big long list of things, and it's very difficult to know what to read in what order. So what we tried to do was say, if you're a blind user completely new to music Braille, look at this, then read that, then listen to this. If you're sighted and you're completely new to Braille, read that, watch this, listen to this. But if you're an expert already and you need to learn music Braille, especially, you can jump straight into these much more advanced resources. So we tried to make it much more user-friendly to find out what you should be reading or watching or listening to in order for you to get familiar with music Braille. So there are resources that are available online. I mean, admittedly, most of them are in English, but not all of them. We tried to capture worldwide resources.
And similar to that, slightly wider than the Braille conversation, there's also the accessible formats in music education resources on Sound Without Sight, which talk about the kind of stuff we were speaking about earlier with Music XML and how useful that is as an intermediary format that's useful not just for Braille, but for modified stave notation as well. So that might be a useful little link as well.
Perhaps we need to give you a list of links at the end.
Yeah.
That might be a great idea. Just in case, could you please tell everybody what is modified stave notation?
Yeah, so modified stave notation, it's also known as large print in some circles. So it is effectively a tailored print score to an individual's large print requirements. So as James was talking about earlier, you could have more spacing between your bar lines or your stave lines. You could have larger or smaller note heads. You could have, maybe you like the standard size of music, but you just need the performance directions text bigger or bolder, or maybe you just need bigger lyrics. You can set those requirements and create a style template for yourself and then apply it to any score so it's represented in the style that suits you. There are also a few kind of preset styles that that RNIB has used historically, which are now available in the MuseScore app, so MuseScore Studio. So anyone can open a score from musescore.com and apply through the styles menu a modified stave notation template as a useful starting point for a lot of people and a lot of scores. So yeah, just a way of displaying scores in large print effectively.
Thank you. This is going to sound a little bit melodramatic, but I'm going to ask any of you or all of you, what is your answer to a teacher, to a sighted teacher who chooses to take on a blind student, but refuses to have anything to do with Braille, and to a blind student who refuses to do anything with Braille? What is your explanation? Why should they? Why should I, being a blind person who doesn't know Braille, why should I learn it? Now I got MuseScore, I got perfect pitch. I'm just a all over perfect kid. Why should I ain't got no time for this Braille stuff, which is time consuming, obviously. Why on earth should I bother with it?
Can I take that one? As I
Yes,
am,
you can,
as I am the blind musician here.
Yeah.
Please do.
So one of the really strong arguments I use for needing Braille music is, yes, it's absolutely fine to learn stuff by ear, and many blind people have excellent oral skills. And, you know, to this day, I will use a mixture of audio and Braille, depending on what I want to learn. So if I want to learn a pop song, I will just go to YouTube, play it. Yeah, I've got that.
Definitely.
You
Yes.
know, I will
Yes.
not even bother with Braille music for that. However, if it's a Chopin etude or a Chopin prelude, number 16 springs to mind. I'm not going to even try playing that one. That will be incredibly difficult to learn by ear because there are
Yes.
so many notes going so fast.
Or any list. You take any list.
Or list, or you know, depending on your skill, it could be anything. It could be Mozart, it could be Handel, Beethoven, anybody. But the real thing I say to people is, one day that teacher is not going to be there. When you leave school, you will stop having music lessons. What are you going to do then? And there are so many people who learn an instrument at school. They get a certain way, they might enjoy it, and they leave school and they're stuck. And I think that is a very, very bad situation to be in.
It is.
You know, so if you do know Braille music, as we know, Braille is literacy and Braille is independence. You can continue
to that.
Yes.
You can continue learning music and so on at your own pleasure. And it's so good that we've got so many tools. Now, I'm going to speak a little bit about my own experience. When I was at school, I had various different music teachers. One of them was blind, and everything we did was from Braille. Everything. He would not countenance going, listening to something until you've learnt the Braille. Now, you could say that's a bit extreme, but you learnt that piece, and I can still play some of those pieces to this day, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was. On the other hand, I had a sighted teacher who knew nothing about Braille, and it was really interesting. He was quite happy for me to use Braille if the Braille was there. And he said, yes, well, if the Braille is there, learn some more music before the next lesson, which is great. But he was also, I thought it was really interesting because he was not concentrating on the nuts and bolts of, oh, yes, that's double staccato there. That means all the next 4 notes are going to be staccato until you see the sign again. We actually could look at a higher level of the phrasing of the piece, the structure of the piece, a much sort
It
of
was
more,
my method also with my teacher.
yeah. So I think having both those who did know Braille and those who didn't know Braille, it was actually a nice balance overall.
I've got one point to add as well, which is actually quite an important one, but quite a simple one that can be overlooked and is overlooked too often, which is music qualifications. I think certainly in the UK, if you want to study music at university, you will need to have done music qualifications before that point. So that would be a GCSE and an A level in most cases. And reading and writing music notation is an assessed part of those qualifications. That's something that we see too often is people have learned music by ear all through their kind of younger life, and they get to the age of being 15, 16, 17 doing these qualifications, and suddenly they realize they have to know Braille at that point, and it's too late at that point.
Yeah, and
So
it's
they
not only
have-
just the
Mhm,
it's
yeah.
not only just the academic qualifications, Jay, is it? It's also the practical ones. So here in the UK, there are 8 main grades, if you like, practical grades, and if you want to do 6, 7, and 8, you have to do either what they call practical musicianship or what they call grade 5 theory, both of which involve reading music.
But
Yeah.
wouldn't there be a little bit of leeway for a blind person when they say, "Oh, I'm blind, I can't do this," and they say, "Oh, okay, fine, you're blind, that's fine. We'll
There are
relax some of the rules for you."
there are some differences. So, for example, you don't have to sight read. You have some preparation time to read, for example, or you can have an oral repetition test and so on. But you get to the higher grades, you've got, I'm going to play you this twice, and then I want you to play it back to me. That's getting hard if you can't read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I would always advocate, if anybody is serious about music, particularly the more structured kind of music where you need to know all the notes and so on, I would very strongly advocate learning Braille music.
Sarah, is there anything you would like to add or to contribute to the, to this discussion?
Not so much, but I would just emphasize it's about general literacy. It's literacy and
I
independence.
agree.
Yes.
And the earlier you start, the better chance you have later in life of choosing what you want to do, whether it's for work or pleasure. And if you decide early on you're not going to learn to read in Braille, or you're not going to learn to read music Braille, you're basically cutting off an opportunity early, which you may regret later.
That's absolutely right. Let me come back to people singing in choirs. I mentioned that earlier. I know people who now can go to their choir master. They say, "Can I have the XML file for this?" And they can produce their own Braille copy using the tools we've been talking about. And then
Don't they
can
say what?
They can
The
produce
master.
the choir master.
Don't they say what? Like,
Oh, no,
can I
because-
have the XML file? What?
Well, because many of these choir masters will be using programs like Sibelius or MuseScore or whatever.
okay.
So all you have to tell them is, can you just please export my part as music XML? And then with the tools we've been talking about, they can produce their own Braille copy if they have a Braille embosser, etc. And then they can actively participate in the choir without having to say to the person next to them, oh, could you read me the entire lyrics of this song? Or can you just go through the whole of that part for me? I need to learn it. They can actually go straight into the choir and off you go. And I think that's wonderful.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on this cheerful note, I
Yes.
think we have to wrap it up because we have really run out of time. But this has been a most wonderful discussion, and
Yes.
thank you very much, Sarah,
Jay and
Jay.
James for
Thank you so
joining us
much for
today. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank you,
having
guys.
us. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure
thanks
to
so
talk
much.
with you all.
Thank you.
Про Брайль. Смотри в точку.